Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Church Digital Podcast. My name is Jeff Reed, and thank you once again for joining us today for the Church Digital Podcast. I'm joined today as we're kicking off episode 2, the second of many episodes to come. I'm joined with Rey and I, online campus pastor at Christ Fellowship in Miami, Florida. Hey, Rey, you want to tell everybody hello?
Hello, everyone. Good to be with you again.
Way to do exactly as I tell you to do. Not vary a little bit, but just literally just tell him hello.
I'm a robot.
So, hey, a robot Rey, here's where we're going. Hey, we are excited about today. So we're going to do something a little unique here for episode 2. Coming up in the future, we're going to have different guests and things on. But really, as we're kicking off this episode, we really just wanted to give you guys a chance to get to know us and a little bit about who we are. And so I've got a track record and a long history of church online and digital and those things, and with about 20 years history in ministry. And Rey has got a plethora of information here at Christ Fellowship now, being the guy. And you've been doing ministry under 10 years, right around?
I've been doing ministry now for about 15, 16 years, but with church online, it's literally been like the last 2 or 3. And so it's been great to be part of this and to see how God's worked in it and continuing to work in it. And, really the thing that I never really understood was simply by engaging people on social media, I was already an online, type of ministry. I had no idea, but little did I understand at the time, but I was starting to get it, that people were expanding their thoughts and their viewpoints of touch points on ministry, on discipleship, on really community and what it means to be part of something, to be part of an actual community of people. We're all expanding our definitions of that. And so that's not unique to me. I think that's something that's happened for all of us.
Yeah, so you see, that's why Rey's the online pastor at Christ Fellowship Miami, because he's interested in creating community, utilizing some of these online spaces. But here, what we wanted to do today with this episode is we wanted to hone in and ask this and say this. What are 6 things that we would want to tell our online? I really just want to start over this whole thing.
Okay, go for it, man. Okay.
That was so good. It's 6 things we want to tell our pastor. No, how do I do this without calling out Rick?
No, 6. If you could have an honest conversation with your senior pastor, what would be 6 things that you would tell him about church online?
Yes.
Or maybe 6 things that you wish that your pastor would understand about church online.
6 things we wish our pastor. 6 things we wish pastors. I don't want to make it about our.
Yeah.
6 things we wish pastors understood, lead pastors understood about church online.
Or maybe even all pastors. Not honestly, all pastors. Yeah.
Lead all pastors. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Church Digital Podcast. My name is Jeff Reed. Thanks for joining us today. It's episode 2. We've made it through episode 1. Now we're on number 2.
We made it.
Yes, we have made it. Life is good. Hey, so in the future, we will have guests and different people from across church online, across the country, kind of jumping on the podcast and sharing and dialoguing through this. But really with this episode, once again, we wanted to bring in Rey as our co-host. Rey and I is in here from Christ Fellowship Miami. He's the online pastor there. And we really just wanted to dialogue a little bit more about us, let you get to know who we are and what we're about here doing this Church Digital Podcast. And so, hey, Rey, man, you just want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
It's so great to be back with you guys. I'm very excited just to follow what God is doing, both with what we're doing here at Church Online over at Christ Fellowship. God has really opened doors and expanded in a lot of ways, just not just the type of people that we're able to reach, but really even just the kind of community that we're able to create and the people that we're able to engage. It's just fascinating how we're helping just bridge the gap between the physical and the digital space. And God has given us a lot of great things here. But on the personal side, I'm thrilled, to tell you guys about my wife, my kids. Got a wonderful wife, Lauren, got 2 beautiful girls. And God has just blessed us with an overflowing ministry. And we're glad to share our heart and whatever we can with you guys. And so glad to be here with Jeff. And we got a lot of fun things to share with you today.
That's awesome. Way to totally call me out for not talking about my kids, but you go ahead and doing that and bragging about how awesome they are.
I had to take my shot out there, man. I got to get my romance points where I can.
Very good. I talked about my kids in episode 1, so we'll just ignore that and just keep moving for what's next. And I'm sure knowing my kids, they're going to come up down the road. Hey, well, I'm excited about this episode today as we're going to unpack some things. And so Rey and I were dialoguing, trying to figure out, hey, what do we want to talk about in the space? How best can we encourage people out there that are considering doing church online, that are maybe starting to do church online, maybe just trying to kick the tires and figure out where to go, how to do this thing. And so here's the topic that we wanted to come up with. And so Ray and I sat down and we figured out 6 things that we wish pastors knew about church online. And so the goal here is we're talking through these, or maybe these are conversation starters that you can have with your pastors at your church, your leadership teams, whoever's kind of over that, or maybe you are one of these guys and you're trying to figure out how to connect with an online audience, that you're a pastor, you're trying to figure out how to engage more in that field. And so collectively between Ray and I, we've got a lot of years of experience in church ministry as well as on the digital side. And our takeaway from that are these 6 items, 6 points that we wish pastors would know about church online. And so I'll go ahead and read them, and then Ray, we can just dialogue and kind of work through it.
Go for it.
Number 1, the people online are part of your church. The people online are part of your church. Hey, Ray, you want to tackle that?
Yeah, they are. First of all, yes, they are. They are very much part of your church. In episode 1, Jeff talked about 3 different door environments through which people engage. He talked about the front door, which is kind of like your first-time guests and your outsiders and people who are just looking in. He talked about the side door, which are your folks who attend on a regular basis, or maybe they consider your church their home church. And for whatever reason, the digital space is where they engage when they can't be there physically in the room. And then there's the people that this is their only means of connecting. Now, in all 3 cases, okay, they are your responsibility as a shepherd. And, just like the person who comes in as a first-time guest in a physical environment, well, they may never come back. They're just an Easter or Christmas only person. Okay, but they're your responsibility, okay? They are your responsibility, both in that moment and even over the haul. You got to do everything you can to engage them and to get them engaged in your discipleship process. And so whether they're engaging your church purely online, whether they're attending once in a while and engaging the rest of the time online, or whether they're on the outside looking in, I'm telling you, they are under your care. They are part of your church. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's so good. It was funny. I was talking about this with a pastor recently, and I was like, church online isn't fake news. and he looked at me and he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, we don't sit around and make this up. And so, Ray, so if somebody, so let's hone in here and let's break it down specific.
Let's do it.
Somebody out there right now has a pastor who doesn't know this. How can that person out there really convey, hey, we're still part of the church. Online is part of the church. What steps do they need to do? How do they approach that conversation?
From what I've seen over time, and we've grown through this process here at Christ Fellowship, and Jeff, you're a part of that, because we asked a lot of these questions early on, and we didn't know necessarily. We stumbled through a lot of these spaces. And so, if you're a lead pastor and you're listening to this, you're like, well, you guys, I don't even know how you arrived at this thing. Just know that we struggled with all the same theological questions and with all the struggles and with all the love and heartache that you did as well. And what worked for us was just gathering stories, just pure stories of not just people coming to know Christ, but people growing in Christ over time. People engaging in serving, people engaging in giving, people engaging in a lot of the same spiritual disciplines that we would ask them to engage in a physical space, happening online. These are phenomenal things that we're doing. And it's not just tools. These aren't just tools that we're developing. The tools are part of it, but really it's a means of a growing community and a growing spiritual community in which people are taking real, tangible, physical, spiritual steps. Now, they may not be in the room with you, but they are growing spiritually. And so you have to keep this in mind. And pastor, if you're out there and you're struggling with this, I just want to encourage you. Okay. It's okay to struggle with it, but you must ask some hard questions about what you're going to do for that individual that comes to know Christ by either listening to your podcast, by consuming your content in some kind of way, by listening to your podcast, by watching your message. You got to ask, what's their next step? And if you already come up with step 1, you're already giving them a discipleship pathway.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, and it's important here to remember that analytics lie.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about this a lot, but I'm a pastor at a small church. I got 250 people that come, and I got 2,000 views on Facebook Live. Reality of this, guys, those Facebook Live views are based on 3 seconds. A person's literally scrolling through the phone, watching the pop up in their news feed, and they pause to sneeze and keep scrolling. That person is through here. I'm not saying that the person who sneezes while scrolling through Facebook Live is part of your church, but it's important to really hone in who the important people are, who the people who are connected to your church are. And so, and by Ray, what Ray's saying with the stories is so important, but the numbers like lie. They give the appearance that things are much grander and much bigger, when really embrace the smallness of it, embrace the individualism of these people that are, and solve their problems to getting them plugged in, getting them connected, getting them discipled. Like, solve it on the small level, create those systems so that it will grow with you as your ministry in the physical space, as well as in the digital and the virtual space, as they both grow together.
That's right.
And that, interestingly, segues very well into number 2. What works in physical locations does not always work online. And so I'll dig into this one a little bit. And I've produced thousands of church services. I have been production director for churches for years. I've been weekend experience director, creative director. And so, like, I've been danced all around this environment and have seen it from many different angles. And what's important is that you have someone who stops and pauses and says, is this going to work in context of online?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm going to give you just several examples of, hey, you know what? If the announcements that you're doing in the service are all aimed towards serving locally in your community, that doesn't mean much for the guy who's watching your service on the other side of the country.
Does not.
Take it even a step further. If you've, and Ray was talking about the front door, side door, digital door. If you've got somebody who is maybe sick at home with a sick kid and not in the service, they're watching, but the only way to sign up for your local service project in the coming week is in the lobby. That doesn't do anything for them either. And so it's making sure that you've got systems where people that want to engage with your church, to be part of your discipleship process, to be serving, to be part of a small group, to be part of giving, making sure that you've got systems and you're communicating to those people how to do that. You know, just even in my experience, like as online pastors, sometimes the application point would make a lot of sense in the room of a message. Like, you know, the pastor's landing the plane has done this really creative thing where you write down the name of people that you're praying for, that you want to witness to, and you come up and you nail it on the cross, and all this elaborate, you know, it gives chills in the room and everybody's excited and you can just feel the Holy Spirit, you know, coming down. But as a viewer online, there's a level of disconnect to that.
Absolutely.
And so trying to figure out, make sure, not that you can't do the creative stuff for the room because you don't want online to hold back the room, but don't forget them or turn them into the redheaded stepchild. Start to kind of create some of those environments, or figure out how they can be part of it, what they need to do to get those same application and touch points with that. So
yeah, and I think the big deal there, Jeff, is just representation, right? Like acknowledgement of the fact that they exist. You know, so if you are going to do those big creative elements, maybe designing something that's unique to them or for them. You know, we're going to talk to Jay Cranda eventually. I love what Jay does for communion, you know, before Saddleback does communion online. You know, he lets them know in advance. He tells them the materials to buy. He you know, gives them a list of instructions to kind of take part in so that they can be part of the experience as well. That's so crucial and so important. And, you know, many people would look at communion and say, well, that's unique to a physical space. Well, no. Yeah, if you make it that way, or if you design it that way. But if you design it in such a way that it can be inclusive of your people online, you can have something special.
yeah. And I want to really hone in on this in a later episode, but like the power of online, this got cut off my list. This would be my number 7. I'm just going to tease it and we'll do it later. The power of online isn't in our pastors. The power of church online is in the people, you know, and using Churchline to empower the people with that. but that is a much richer conversation. So that's a tease for something that'll be coming up here very soon. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, let's get into number 3. Just because this scales well doesn't mean we should do it cheap. Just because it scales well doesn't mean we should do church online cheap. Ray, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, and mind you, and it's funny, as Jeff and I were putting this list, together, we wanted to make sure that everybody understood. None of these are like shots at at any organization we ever worked with or anything like this. Really, this is just what we've encountered as we talk to different people who engage these spaces and who have to do this. And so church online does scale well. Listen, you can reach the masses with church online, and you can do it for pennies on the dollar. You can either go and rent out a huge amphitheater and have like a bunch of people come to your amphitheater and spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a big event, or you can leverage church online to hit people consistently every week and hit a lot of the same numbers of people over time and really engage them in a lot of different meaningful spaces. Now, keeping that in mind, my heart breaks sometimes when I've seen massive churches. I mean, churches with unlimited resources, and then the content that they're putting out there online, the way that they're showcasing their services, and mind you, that's on the content side. But then even on the community side, the fact that they're not resourcing it well, the fact that they're not staffing it with volunteers or even putting any kind of effort or emphasis towards this, it shows very little value for what's going on there. Now, I can't speak into what all those churches do and what's their aim, but I can tell you that those people, whether you value them or not, it's still being communicated across the board. And so, if you've got a church online experience and in the room is just a phenomenal mix, but online, I mean, your audio is terrible. You're getting bad camera shots. The camera falls over and hits the floor and nobody picks it up for half the service. There's all sorts of things going on there. And so, yes, this scales very well. It doesn't take much to get up and running, but if you keep it bad, or if you continue to just do it on the cheap, over time, you're going to get called out on it. And that's not necessarily something that's good.
Yeah. And so it's doing it, not on the cheap, making the investments, going with what works on the small and expanding. And we talk with David Urzy with Cape First in a future episode, and he really pours into this idea of start small, create systems that work on the small, and then build off of that. Build off the success of the small rather than going huge and trying to, maintain off of that. And so allow your, and honestly, and I've had this conversation before where it's like, you allow the staff to grow, your leadership to grow with you. Confession in my life, and I've talked about this actually on Jay's Cranda's YouTube channel in an interview with him about a year ago, where I ran, and quickly I found myself literally at the end of the dock, the metaphysical dock, getting ready to jump in the water, and nobody's behind me because I hadn't brought the leadership team and other staff behind me. I carried the weight of everything on my shoulders and then turned around and nobody understood the basics. And so allowing it to scale effectively is very important in context of online. And so, man, Ray, hey, thanks for sharing that one. Let's get into number 4. Number 4, church online does not replace meeting in physical locations.
Shocker! So, this is the shocker one.
Church online does not replace meeting in physical locations. And so let me breathe on this a little bit and then I'll hand it over. Now there are, listen, and somebody's going to be like, but what about that virtual church, VR church that I saw on Wired magazine? Okay, look, here's, and we're going to hopefully get DJ Soto on this podcast. I've, had lots of conversations with him. And so there are exceptions to this. And I know people who are trying to create digital church in context of exclusively online. I'm not going to lie. I've thought about it myself, but at the end of the day, and we see this a lot, and this has been, it was actually in a USA Today article. You can check out theChurch.digital. We'll link to it in the show notes, but I've blogged on this, that students are lonelier today than 5 years ago. That's
right.
Something like, I think it was seniors, high school seniors reported 13% more high school students, seniors, reported being lonely now than even like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of it equated down to this idea of social media. They're engaging people, but they're not relationally connecting with them.
Hmm.
And so the one thing that I really want to hone in on, and while the point of my blog was like, hey, church online, this is why we shouldn't do church online. This is what people have said. People are lonely. Technology isn't physical community. Like, and I would actually say, no, that's why you do church online.
That's right.
To engage with people and pull them into physical community.
Mm-hmm.
The end game of church online is not to be a self-contained ecosystem. And VR Church, and what I know of DJ Soto, he believes the same thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll talk about this idea of online to offline, where the message that we hear online impacts our offline world. If the only place where I wear my Christian hat, okay, I don't have a Christian hat, but if I did have a Christian hat, if the only place that I wore that was in virtual environments, if my friends who knew me in real life didn't know me as a Christian, that doesn't make me a very good Christian, does it? And so it's living it not only in the virtual world, because the same thing is said virtually,
Mm-hmm.
as it is in the physical. And so church online does not replace the physical world. It's not that. What I believe it is, it's meant to complement it and to help the physical and the virtual. And so we're going to be talking a lot. Hey, and Ray, you want to just like give like a 30-second overview, omni-channel, because you're so good and I know you're passionate about that.
You know, when folks talk to me about this, I always give the personal story of the fact that my wife and I were long distance in our relationship for about a year and a half while we were dating. And, you know, this is like the introduction of FaceTime, right? And so we had the benefit of that. We didn't have to do letters. We didn't have to just, be there on the phone. We were able to engage face to face. But if you were to ask me, hey, which is better, my wife next to me in the room, or at the time, my girlfriend next to me in the room, or having her via FaceTime, I would tell you, I would throw my computer out the window every day of the week if you would tell me that I could have her here in the room with me. There's no question about it. And so the reality is, because that was our primary means, the only way that we could meet on a regular basis, face to face, we took advantage of the technology that was given to us at the time. And so we used it for everything that it was worth. Now, in the same way, technology is great. Technology can allow for, community and for relationship to take place. It's a great platform. However, we're still physical beings. We're still tangible beings. We need to be around in the physical presence of other people. And we can't sacrifice that. We can't say that church online is going to go ahead and take over for that for folks. No. We still believe in scripture where it says that we should not forsake the gathering together of the saints. And sure, church online is a medium for that, but it's not a replacement for physical spaces for that. And so for folks out there who are expecting us to say the opposite, no, we don't believe that either. We believe that this is a way to take, to transfer people into community. And we've seen that happen over and over again online.
That's awesome. Well said. So let's roll to number 5, because we are hammering these things through, and I want to spend some time on this one because this is a good one right here.
This is good.
Effective church, number 5. If you're keeping score at home, effective church online is more than just content. Effective church online is more than just content. Let me say this one thing, and then Ray, I'm going to give it to you because I know Ray is like the content guy. There is a difference, Pastor. There's a difference, church online person, between digital communications and call it digital mission, call it digital discipleship. Mm-hmm. Digital communications is essentially marketing and communicating a message to a group of people. Digital mission, digital discipleship is utilizing technology to look at the world through a digital mission field lens to the end of where you want to disciple them. And so if you as a church believe that discipleship cannot happen virtually, it can only happen within a physical space, your church campus, an office, a home. If you can only do discipleship there, then what you're really wanting to do is digital communication. But if you're interested in taking a step further and you want to impact and change lives virtually, not just within the physical realm, then you need to also not only look at it as digital communication, but look at ways that you can disciple and help people grow deeper in their faith
That's right.
in the virtual realm. So Ray, you want to dig into some of that?
Yeah. For so long, we've seen and we've heard great things about pastors and what takes place, not just on Sunday morning, but in spaces like Sunday schools or small groups. And the thing that we've all struggled with is there's a difference between content and then community. And I think that's a hard thing for all church leaders to wrestle with, content and community, in terms of what changes lives and how the two are supposed to work in relationship together. Now, listen, church leaders, the worship music and the sermon, they are very spiritual items. They're very important to our spiritual walk, but that's still content at the end of the day. And content without community doesn't necessarily transform lives. And so I think it was Ed Stetzer. I think I'm going to be paraphrasing Stetzer when he talked about how, we want our people to be missional, but we're building our churches like theaters, in that even people who are sitting in the room, we've got one guy on stage and the majority of the people are there watching him enact his spiritual gift. And meanwhile, everybody else is a consumer. Everybody else in the room is a consumer of watching one person enact their spiritual gift. And so effective church online and effective church ministry in general isn't just, hey, we're going to watch content. You got to give people handles, okay? It's got to be teaching and content that leads somewhere, that gives them an action step, that challenges them to take it to that next level. And then you have to provide a discipleship pathway through which people can experience community, grow in relationship with others, take part in spiritual disciplines. That can happen both in social media and in person. So if you're thinking, oh, well, that's just church online where that happens. No, that's not true. Even in our physical church spaces, we can be great about content distribution, but terrible about effective discipleship if we're not careful.
So true. That was golden. Thank you for that. That was Ed Stetzer. We'll find it in the show notes. I'll try to link to it. I know I've heard him say that several times in messages. I'm willing to bet he's got it in writing somewhere. I don't know if he pulled it from a book. So, but yeah, we'll dig into that and we'll link to it in the show notes. And so it's you have to be very careful if all we're doing is creating content. And sometimes, honestly, like we may think we're doing more than we are, or maybe we need to just stop and analyze if what we're doing is actually what we mean to do, what we set out to do. But I would say this, like church online, and we'll talk about this later as well. Church online is a mirror for the physical church. And so if you're angry and you're frustrated with your church online that all it's doing is just generating content, maybe pause and look and see, well, is that happening at our physical church? Is that happening and we just haven't, or because what happens online drips from the physical. And
Right.
So sometimes the actual church online is just mirroring the values that you're showing intentionally or even sometimes unintentionally. So pastor that's out there, pause, look, evaluate, maybe ask around, get input from other people that are outside. And because the end game of our church biblically is to go and make disciples. Mm-hmm. And yes, content is a way to do it. But if content, is not the end, church online is not the end, it's the means to creating a discipleship model in place. So pastors, be aware of that. So let's land the plane here. Number 6, church online is a reflection of our church strategy. Well, I kind of let the cat out of the bag there. Church online is a reflection of our church strategy. A little bit there about talking about the mirror, but that does hone in true that you cannot do something separate from the church. We've seen this time and time again. We'll bring these guys on the podcast to really unpack it and break it down. But what happens when you do that is that you create two different hemispheres and they don't talk to each other, and there's self-implosion. It's inevitable that'll happen. And so utilizing your church online to create a unified structure from your campus, from your church, is vital. Ray, you want to unpack some of this?
Yeah, it's just so important, now we're going on over like 20 years since our former executive pastor released his book, Simple Church, right? Like it's been a good while at this point. Maybe not quite 20 just yet, but it's one of those things where, we need an effective church strategy in order to make disciples. And it has to be clear. It has to be concise, and it has to be something that even makes sense doing in digital spaces as well. because so many people are engaging in your church, not just in a physical space, but also in a digital space. And so you need to be sure and have flexible options for them, because so many people are living in two environments anyways. Here, where I'm at, in my context, Miami is a very transient city. And so people are in and out of town all the time. In fact, even though they call Miami home, the reality is they may do life between 2 or 3 different cities, just in a given week or in a given month. And more, because our world is getting smaller, thanks to advanced travel, thanks to advancements in communication, and even in energy and every other area that we're seeing in tech. Right now, people are able to live in multiple physical spaces, but they still want to engage in that same spiritual space. They still want to have their same church home. And so whatever effective strategy you're utilizing at your church in a physical space, you need to make sure and have a plan as to how it's going to reflect in your digital space as well, because church online, it is a reflection of your church strategy. We talk a lot around here in Christ Fellowship about, if we reach Miami, we really have the capability of reaching the world, because so many people are from so many different spaces. But Miami is not the only unique space like this anymore. New York, LA, Chicago, all these cities are becoming these great hubs of international communication. And even not far from us, Orlando, where Mickey Mouse calls his home. It's more and more becoming this international melting pot where people from different countries are coming together and they're calling it their home community. But they don't just stay in Orlando. They go about and around. And so for churches over there, it's becoming crucial for them to have a reflective strategy for church online that also reflects what they do in their physical spaces.
That's awesome. By the way, Ray was, when you reference executive pastor, is referencing Eric Geiger, current, was it Mariners Church out
Love
in
you, Eric, all the way out there at Mariners. They're so lucky to have you as a senior pastor. We love.
Yes, they are. So, and Eric is, I'm working details right now with Eric joining the podcast. So he'll be on at some point. He wrote up a follow-up on the Omni channel that was very good. And so I'm looking forward to having Ray and him on to unpack that even more so, and to help us apply it to our churches today. But it's not an either or, it's an and so I think that's really the where this is going to land. Like, it's not online church or physical church, it's a both. And the organization who can interweave themselves to the point where it's the same, whether it's virtual or physical, man, those organizations are going to win. And those are the ones that are going to be ready for what the future holds as God continues to unravel and show this digital mission field that's open for us in the future. And so be ready, be flexible. Remember, it's not just creating content and having our content available online. It's creating a discipleship system so that you're utilizing online to impact lives, to help people grow deeper in their faith, regardless of where they're located. Absolutely. Whether that's next door to your church or whether that's in another hemisphere. At the end of the day, we as the church are called to create disciples of these people. And rather than saying that's not my responsibility, church, it's time to pick it up and to utilize technology and this tool to just reach out. You know, it's funny. Like, I was having this conversation. I want to close on this today, but I had this conversation the other day with a pastor, and he just made the statement. Could you imagine what Billy Graham would do with the internet?
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, could you imagine what Paul would do with the internet? And it's like, and suddenly it's in my joke, in passing was, but we do Fortnite. I mean, come on. We got gaming. There's always like yelling at each other on Facebook. Like, we've got the power to do so much with it.
Absolutely.
And instead we're squandering it on things that aren't kingdom impacting. So, hey, pastor, chalk that up as number 7. And we're going to close with that. The power of the internet for the kingdom is ready and ripe and ready to go. It's just a matter of catching that vision and running with it. Hey, we're going to close up the podcast right here. Hey, church leader, church volunteer, church staff person who's out there fighting this battle, continue fighting. Testimony on my side, there's been seasons of my life where I felt so isolated and alone because nobody out there saw what I saw. Nobody saw purpose and vision behind this. And literally, I felt like I was alone. I felt like it was weird. I was weird. And I felt like I was wrong because nobody else saw it. And so I want to take a moment here and just encourage you. You're not alone. You're not, well, you may be weird, but in this context, you're not weird. And you're not wrong. It's helping, getting leadership, getting people to see, to understand the vitalness of this. And we here at the Church Digital, we want to help create resources to encourage, to inspire, and to help you have these conversations. So check out the website, thechurch.digital, thechurch.digital for more of that. And you can find us on social media. Ray is, where are you on social media?
At Rey Dearmas, R-E-Y, for Ray, R-E-Y-D-E-A-R-M-A-S. You can catch me on almost every social media platform. Come talk with me.
Awesome. And I'm Deerfedge, as in like Jeff Reed backwards. And that's weird. So you may want to check the show notes to get that. But you can find either one of us there. And man, we would love to dialogue. We'd love to share with you. And more than that, like, we just want to hear your story. So hit us up and let's talk it through. But for Ray, my name is Jeff, and it has been a pleasure to be with you guys here on the Church Digital Podcast. And we will see you with the next episode featuring Jay Cranda from Saddleback, which is going to be awesome. So see you guys then.